Let me just pray before we get started, and then we'll talk about the mess of our time. So, Jesus, thank you that we could be here this morning. We thank you for the snow and that it's not sticking, it's just wet. And we thank you that it's not 20 below, it's just 32. God, I thank you that you're the creator of time, the master of time. I don't know whose idea it was, Jesus, to skip an hour, but I don't think that was from you. So we ask that regardless, in the middle of this mess right now, whether it's outside or the fact we're feeling hurried because we missed an hour of sleep or we're just tired, we pray that you would enter into it and that you would speak to us right where we are, and you'd speak to our hearts in ways that I certainly can't, and we just trust you to bring about your good work in our lives. We pray that and ask that in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, so do any of you how many of you know what FOMO is? Okay, some of you FOMO, fear of missing out. How many of you suffer from it? If you suffer from FOMO, or the fear of missing out, what you try to do is figure out how to do everything, okay? Because if something comes up and you're like, oh, I want to do that, I want to be a part of that, suddenly you need to figure out, how can I do that? Because if you look at your calendar, you can only book one meeting at 1 o'clock. You can't be in multiple ones. You can only go to one sporting event at 6 p.m. You can only watch one television show at 9. But there might be other options, especially if you have kids. You might have to be at this ball field and that ball field, and then you divide and conquer. What do you do, though, if you want to fit it all in? When my family went this past Christmas, okay, we've got the typical family minivan, okay? Dodge Caravan is just what we've got. It's not my favorite thing, but it is what it is. And it's about, 12, 13, 14 years old, something like that. Well, my kids aren't as small as they used to be when it used to be filled with car seats. My kids are bigger, and so they take up a whole seat. So, my oldest Tyler is 6'4" and no small man. And Tanner's not small, Chandler's not small, even Sarah is not small. Hannah's the only one, but that's because she's 11, or almost 11, or 12, or whatever it is. Anyway, ask her, she knows. So anyway, when we decide that we're going to go to Florida, we're going to head down to Florida, and we need to pack. And in Florida, where my parents were for Christmas, they live in a retirement area down there, and they have a golf course, and so, of course, my boys want to golf, and so we need to pack golf clubs. And then we're going to be there for 10 days, and so we need to pack clothes. But it's kind of winter in Florida, and so you don't know if it's actually going to be 70s and 80s or if it's going to be 50s, and so you don't know what kind of clothes. And it's Christmas time, and so you have to pack presents. Okay, so you kind of get in the picture. And normally when we travel with my dogs, and I have 2 golden retrievers. So they're not small either. And so we're going to fit 7 people. We didn't take my dogs this time because they just didn't fit. Okay, but I want to show you a picture of what my car looked like when I got it packed. Okay, made sure that we could fit everything in it. Now, just so you know, I found this picture and I couldn't resist sharing it with you. I counted 73 people on that truck, okay? And those are only the ones that I could see, okay? But that's kind of what it's like, or at least that might be what it feels like. If you've got FOMO, you're trying to figure out, how can I add one more thing? What am I going to do? My schedule is so packed, but these things are important. And you've probably heard before, time is money, right? Or at least time's like money. And if you were here when we talked about money, you may have remembered me saying something like, having more of it will not solve your problems if you do not know what to do with it. And time is the same way. Having more of it is not going to solve your problems if you don't know what to do with it, and that's good because we can't make more time. We all have the same limited amount of time. I don't remember the math. I think it's 1,400 and change. No, it's not. Yeah, it's 86,400 seconds. Is that right? Somebody do the math. You can text it in a second. What I want to do, though, is I want to ask your opinion. Okay? So here's what you can do. You can vote. Grab your phones. We want you to use them. And if you go to menti.com, it should automatically, if you have location on, it should automatically pick up the one that's right here. But if it doesn't, just enter the code 177850, whatever it says up here. Here's the questions, okay? I just want your opinion so I know what we're dealing with. I need more time 4, and you can choose up to 4 of these options that are on this little poll, okay? So what do you need more time for? Or what do you think you need more time for? Pick 4. Question number 2 is, my calendar or schedule is, and then you will give the descriptor, okay? You can only pick one there. And then the last question I'd like to hear from you guys when you go to menti.com is, got a reminder, is what's one thing that you'd change about how you spend your time? Okay? So go ahead and start throwing in answers here. I'm going to go and look at them. So I need more time for work or family or friends or fun or rest or housework or exercise or God. Interesting. I see votes are still coming in, so keep them coming. Right now, the clear winner is people here think that, or would say that they need more time for God. And now God has just been tied with family. God and family are the two that people need more time for, or at least that you guys here in this crowd would say you need more time for. And then in second would be friends. And it looks like, and they keep changing because people keep voting, but it looks like rest and exercise. Nobody really wants more time. There's only a few of you that want more time for housework or work. Okay, let's see what you guys have to say about your schedule or your calendar. My schedule and my calendar. Okay, the bulk of you, this is interesting to me, the bulk of you would say that your schedule or calendar is a helpful tool that you cannot live without. Okay, so this tells me what I'm dealing with. But then there's a very close number of you who say that your calendar or your schedule is too full. And then the next closest to that is my calendar or schedule is non-existent. Okay, this is interesting. Good, they're still coming. Okay. And then one of the things that you would change about how you spend your time. I'm just going to read off what some of you guys have put here. I would be more efficient and productive. I'd start the day the night before. I'd be more intentional about investing in lost people. I'd do less, I think they meant driving around town, but if you're diving, that's fine. I would be more organized. I want to spend more time listening to God instead of the occasional, hey, God, sorry, I've been busy. I can relate to that. I'd like a bit more time to fix things around my new house. More time with God and family. Stay off social media. Fewer evening commitments. I would sleep more. That's probably a student. Or maybe one of our doctors. Use it wisely for the things I care about. So this is good. I'm just going to go back and see what our final answers were with the totals here. Okay, God is still number 1. People want more time for God. Second is family, and then tied friends and rest. And let's see what the final tally was on my schedule or calendar. Helpful tool, too full, and yep, non-existent. Okay. All right, so now that I know what my audience is, I'm actually kind of happy because I prepared for you. Okay? So thank you for not totally throwing it off. This might actually help you. If you've ever wondered how much time, I don't know if you've done this, but sometimes when you can't sleep at night or when something happens in the world, maybe there was some tragedy, terrorist attack, this, that, or the other, you hear about somebody who's recently passed away, you start to think about yourself. How much time do we have left? And the Bible talks about that. Scripture talks about that. Psalms, in Psalm 39, 4 and 5, I'm just going to read it to you. It should be in your notes. You can follow along. It says, O Lord, make known my end, and what is the measure of my days? Let me know how fleeting I am. Behold, you've made my days a few handbreadths, and my lifetime is as nothing before you. Surely all mankind stands as a mere breath, which you can test when you walk out of here if it's still cold. You can see what the psalmist was saying our life is like when you walk outside and just go, and you can see your breath, and it's there, and then it disappears. Like our life compared to eternity, compared to the God who has created our life, it's just like that. James says pretty much the same thing in James chapter 4. Come now, you who say, today or tomorrow, we will go into such and such town and spend a year there and trade and make profit. Some of you who the calendar is your most helpful friend and tool, this is kind of where we live sometimes. I got this going on, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm not saying that. But what he says is, yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring. What is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little time and then it vanishes. Okay, so just to give you a picture, your life, okay? Done. Okay, now hopefully you're like Febreze and you smell good. Okay? Some of you might be, well, anyway, we won't go there. But this is your life. This is the extent of it. I remember when I finally came to realize that Jesus was who he said he was and cared about my life. It was during a summer camp, and the evangelist who was speaking was standing up, and it was this big old, like, they called it the tabernacle, the place where we would meet. So this big old room, and it was as big as this, not this room, but the room next door. So this whole building wide. And he took out a rope and stretched it out across the entire room and said, you want to know what your life is like? Just kind of picture this. This is like kind of God. Here's your life. And she just cut it. Like, I can't even cut a piece small enough to show you how short your life is. Which got me thinking, how long is your life? And I realized, wow, boom, like that. What are you going to do with it? And so we get all stressed out over the things that are going on or the things that we want to go on. And we're not the only ones who've ever kind of dealt with this. What are we supposed to do? In Psalm chapter 90, Moses actually wrote that. Okay? He didn't write a lot of Psalms, but he wrote Psalm chapter 90. And the interesting thing is, why do we even listen to Moses? I want you to think for a second. We don't listen to Moses just because we see that he's in the Bible somewhere. We listen to Moses because Jesus actually referenced Moses. And if Jesus treats Moses like he was a real person and a real historical figure and had real value to add to our lives and to our story, then I think we should probably listen to Jesus, who listened to Moses. And so this is why we listen to Moses. And Moses is talking about time and who God is, and he's talking about it way before anybody else even would consider a singular mono God. Everybody else had multiple gods. You know, there was Ra, the sun god, and anyway, we won't go through that. But Moses boiled it down, and he's understanding that time is a gift. And in verse 12, he says this. He says, teach us to number our days that we may get a heart of wisdom. In other words, teach us to do something with this short mist of a life that will result in something beneficial, not just for us, but for the kingdom around us. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at a story from Moses' life. And so it's in the first part of your Bible. It's in Exodus. And we're going to see what he did in terms of how he managed his time. Oh, I could have given you all these verses. Look at that. That was really nice of me, but I didn't do it. You've read these, right? Look at that. There's James. And look, hey, you're going to find Psalm. All right. I forgot I even added those because normally I don't. They're in your U version. So if you've got your Bible, go ahead and turn to Exodus chapter 18. And I'm going to give you the summary of the story here. Okay? The Israelites, they were captive in Egypt. They were made slaves, and they had escaped. Okay? So they'd gotten away from Pharaoh, and Moses is leading these people. And they're wandering around, and he's trying to take care of these millions of folks. And his father-in-law shows up to visit and just kind of looks around, and he observes that Moses is sitting around in the same place day after day from morning until dusk or evening, and he's solving people's problems when everybody comes to him, and he says, Moses, what's up with this? This doesn't seem like it's a good idea. And Moses basically tells them, well, look, the people need to learn, and so they come to me with their problems, and so I solve them, I inquire, and I teach them. And Jethro, who's his father-in-law, he looks at him and he says, what you are doing is not good. And then he goes on to say, you should maybe organize things a little bit differently because this is too much for you and it's too much for the people. And he challenges them to rearrange and to delegate and to put people in charge of hundreds and fifties and just in groups. And then the really tough stuff they can bring to him. And so Moses does that and things turn out well and Jethro goes. Okay, well, what can we learn from this story. I think there's a few things that we can learn about how to manage our time. So look at the first couple verses here. It's Exodus chapter 18, and we're just going to look at verse 13 and 14 first. Okay, Jethro's just showed up, and the next day, Moses sat to judge the people, and the people stood around Moses from morning until evening. And when Moses' father-in-law saw all that he was doing for the people, he said, "What is this that you are doing for the people? Why do you sit alone and all the people stand around you from morning until evening?" Okay, Moses, you can see here as the leader of these people, was an extremely busy man. If you wanted to get an appointment with Moses, you would have to show up and you would stand around from morning until evening. He didn't have a break. He had a full schedule, a full docket. Some of you look at your calendars and you're like, here's what I got to do tomorrow. I got to be here, 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 and here. Some of you mothers, same way. I've got to be here, take this kid here, do this thing there, knock this out. And you're very efficient at it, and we're grateful for it. At least I am, because that's my wife. It's not me. However, it's not a very safe place to be either, because you're too busy. And Jethro recognized this. So why do you stand around from morning until evening? And not only that, but you're doing it all alone. So what should we maybe take away from this? Here's what I think you can take away from this. Don't fill your schedule. Manage it. Don't fill your schedule. Manage it. Now, some of you have maybe heard or seen, and I'm not going to recreate it for you. I'm just going to describe it for you. There's this illustration. Imagine, you get a jar, okay? And this is filled with marbles, but basically you have a container, and disconnected me. You doing something back there, Bailey, or is it just me getting messed up? Because it disconnected me. I don't know. If you didn't do anything, we'll figure it out. Here, Kev, you mind figuring this out for me? Well, it's a great illustration. You like that, right?
This is a real illustration.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Had you all fooled there. No, but imagine you get a container, okay, and this would be empty, and they would say, this is time. And you would have a box of sand and a box of pebbles and a box of big rocks, okay? And you would try and fit them in there. And so what they'd do is they'd pour in the sand, and then you'd set the little pebbles on top of it, and then they'd try and fit the big rocks, and the big rocks don't fit, and you're like, whoa, this is not good. But then they take it out, and they try it again with the same big pile of sand, big pile of pebbles, big pile of rocks, and they'll put the big rocks in first, and then they dump the pebbles in and let it, shake them around so they get all sifted through there. And then they put the sand in and shake it around so it fills all the holes. And it does. And then just to, add a little bit to it, they take some water and they pour it in there, and it all fits. And the whole lesson of it is supposed to be, you need to get your priorities right. Put the big rocks in first. But any of you who have ever packed to go on a vacation, okay, it's a good thing, but it's not the right thing. And here's why. If you're going on a vacation to Alaska because you wanted to watch the Iditarod, would you pack the same as if you were going to Hawaii because you wanted to watch the Ironman triathlon? You certainly can. You're welcome to pack boots and parkas to go to Hawaii. But you'd be an idiot. I'm just saying. And so you can go into your closet, you can look around your house, you've got a suitcase, and you're only allowed one. Otherwise, you have to pay for it. That's how it works today. You got one suitcase that you can fill, and you've got more than enough clothes to fill that suitcase 16 times. And they would say, well, you need to put the important stuff in first. Put the big rocks in first, the priorities, and that would be determined by where you're going. But what this kind of illustration fails to help us understand is that there are still big things that are going to get left out because our priorities change based on the day. You only have so much time in your day. But when we're talking about life, like there are some times it's more important that I spend time with my family or my wife or my friends or some of you than it is that I do work. Even though if I were putting things together, I would put the work rock in and say, I need to get the work stuff done, and then I can add some of these other things that are maybe distractions. Here's what I want you to understand. There are always going to be things in your day and in your time that are going to get left out. And so if that's the case, we don't need to just fill our schedule. We need to manage it and decide what we put in. And those priorities will shift from day to day. And so that don't get in mind that the idea of having just the big rocks first is a once and done kind of deal. It's not. Because when your kids are, 2, 3, 4, your priority is going to be a little bit different than when your kids are 20. Or when your kids are 30 and they've moved out of the house, because they should move by then. And so things will change. And we need to learn to manage our schedules, not just fill it. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Moses, he just was flat out busy. He didn't have any room for anything else. It was from morning until evening. He was doing it by himself. And Jethro noticed that it wasn't necessarily a good thing. What goes on next, though? Oh, I already gave you that. Sorry, we had to start over. Go to the next verses, though. You look, and Moses answered, and he said to his father-in-law, well, because the people come to me to inquire of God. And when they have a dispute, they come to me, and I decide between one person and another, and I make them known the statutes of God and his laws. Okay, now this is a very legitimate reason, right? The people need me. And some of you, we make our schedules because the people need me. Like, when I get the privilege of oftentimes being able to work at my house, one, because the church kind of has a shared office that, we share with a whole bunch of other churches, and it's a ways from home. And so I don't always want to go there, so I might just work at home. But when I do, my kids see that I'm home, especially my girls who are homeschooled still, and they'll come and they'll ask me a question. Hey, Daddy, can you do this? Because they see me, and they say, hey, Dad, can you do this? And I tell them, no, I can't. And the immediate question is going to be what? Why? Exactly. It's like, you guys live with me. And I have to explain to them, well, because I have this or this or this that I need to do. It's work. It's because I'm busy. And I have a very good reason most of the time. Just like Moses had a very good reason. The people come to me. I mean, that's a really good reason. The people come to me to inquire of God. It's not like they just come to me, but they need me. That was Moses' excuse. And maybe that's your excuse why your schedule's so busy. So many of you said your schedule's too full. However, just going back to the big rocks and the things that we put in first and the things that we allow to take up our time, what Moses didn't do, he didn't know what his priorities were. And let me explain this. For Moses, in his explanation, here's what he's saying. The people come to me to inquire of God, and when they have a dispute, they come to me, and I decide between one person and another, and I make them known the statutes of God and his laws. Okay, that is a good thing. But Moses' job, his task, his priority was not to make sure that the work got done. It was to teach other people how to hear from God for themselves. If you want to turn to Deuteronomy, okay, which is just the second telling, the second giving of the law, it's basically kind of like a second Exodus, which is why you'll find a lot of it repeating itself. In Deuteronomy chapter 4, Moses has heard from God, and here I'm just going to read you like 5 verses. Chapter 4, verse 1. Now, Israel, this is Moses talking, listen to the statutes and the rules that I am teaching you and do them. You can see right there that Moses is saying, you guys should do what I'm doing. I'm teaching you to do it. And yet over in Exodus, when Moses is taking care of everything, they come and inquire of me, and so I listen to them and I decide for them and I teach it, but he's doing everything. Listen to these rules and statutes that I am teaching you and do them, that you may live and go and take possession of the land that the Lord, the God of your fathers, is giving you. You shouldn't add to the word that I command you or take from it, that you might keep the commandments of the Lord your God. Your eyes have seen what the Lord did at Baal Peor, for the Lord your God destroyed from among you the men who followed the Baal of Peor. But you who held fast to the Lord your God are alive today. See, I have taught you statutes and rules as the Lord my God commanded me, that you should do them in the land that you're entering to take possession of. And so he's making known to them. He's still kind of teaching, but the problem is Moses is the clog in the funnel. Moses is making sure that his time is busy because he's not willing to share some of the responsibilities with other people. If you even skip over to chapter 5 in Deuteronomy, just the first verse, Moses commanded all of Israel, and he said, Hear, O Israel, the statutes and the rules that I speak in your hearing today, you shall learn them and be careful to do them. So Moses is doing a good thing, but he's not necessarily doing it in the best way. He was God's mouthpiece and spokesperson, but Moses was one who had more to do than just the task. He was supposed to help empower others to do the same kind of thing, and he'd kind of missed that. This is what discipleship is. And this, when we look at this reminds me of one of the values that we have at Discovery, which is serving and leading. Now, Moses would say that he was serving the people, and he was, because he was busy doing what they should have been maybe doing. And so he was only serving. What he wasn't doing is he wasn't leading, because he wasn't handing off any of the additional responsibilities or even giving people the space to fail. And we understand this better if I maybe use something different than Moses and talk about parenting. My wife and I were just talking about this, I don't know, yesterday or Friday. How, when my oldest son went off to college, that was one thing. And he lived at the dorm, and that was fine. And then he'd come home in the summer, but now he stays in a house. And he's not even going to come home in the summer because he's paying rent and he's in a house. And I remember the first time he was leaving, and my wife was saying this, it was just really hard to watch him go after coming home, and then he just went off to his house. And there's just something about, he's gone. And I had to remind her that, yep, and that's a good thing. Not because I want my kids to be gone, but because it means that we've done our job. We've served them as they were young, and we've led them to go ahead and be able to pay their own bills, do their own laundry, cook their own food, figure out their own problems, forge their own relationships, get in trouble on their own. I never did that for them to begin with. But the job of parenting, I'm just going to ask some of you parents, okay, is your job to clean your kids' clothes or to teach them how to clean their clothes? Now, they wouldn't do it like you would. They might even screw up a load or two. Are you willing, though, to do something and know what your priorities are? Because your priorities isn't to make sure the laundry's done. The priority is to make sure that you're not still doing laundry when your child is 34. Is your priority in parenting to make sure that everything is right for your kids? You've heard of helicopter parents before, right? Where anything that goes on, mama just swoops in or daddy just swoops in and takes care of it. Make sure that, hey, they needed to fill this out. They needed to fill that out. Oh, they forgot something, and so you bring it up to school for them. They missed their lunch, blah, blah, blah. And mommy or daddy takes care of it all the time. Is that your job? There may be a time for that, but it's not how you should spend all of your time. You need to know what your priorities are. And so in discipleship, it's not just to teach, it's not to be the know-it-all, it's to be giving things away. Moses wasn't doing that. So if we can't figure that out, and Moses couldn't figure that out, what are we supposed to do? When you look, you can see, and I already told you this when I just told you the story. In verse 17, Moses' father-in-law said, "What you are doing is not good." Okay, so let's just recap. The very short version of this in 4 verses. Moses meets with the people. He answers their questions. He judges for them. Jethro says, "What are you doing?" He says, "Hey, the people come to me to inquire of God. I listen to them. I judge. I teach them." What's wrong with that? Because he's got a really good answer for why he's so busy, and Jethro sees through it all, and he says, "What you're doing is not good." Some of us, with the way that we spend our time and the things that we choose to do with our time, it's not good. Because we've filled it up with so much. I'm going to explain something, but let me just give you kind of the point here. Too much stuff to do is not wise. Committing to too much stuff to do is not wise. Now, some of you know this because you've been at Discovery for the last 3 years or so. Maybe some of you don't, but there are 2 different kinds of time. Okay? There is chronos time, which is like chronological time, which is, if I asked you when your birthday was, you would be able to tell me it was October 20th, 1971, if that's yours. That's mine. or January 1st, or whatever it is. Your birthday. When is your birthday? It's in Chronos time. What are you doing tomorrow at 1 o'clock? That is Chronos time. You knew that you needed to be here today at 10. You knew that you changed your clock forward so that you could be here at 10. And congratulations, you guys made it. Okay, all of this is Chronos time. We know that Jesus entered into the world. We actually mark time by Jesus' entry into the world. There's, BC and AD. And that's a mark in time that is just a linear kind of time. There is also something called Kairos time. And Kairos time, well, you may have had a birthday, and you may have had a due date because you went and talked to your obstetrician or your gynecologist, and they said, hey, here's how it all works out. Your due date is this. And they say you're supposed to have a child on this date. And that date gets closer and closer, and the women get more and more uncomfortable. And the husbands sleep less and less because their wives are stirring and, want ice cream at 4 in the morning. And you get it because you're a good husband. That's Chronos time when your due date is. But when suddenly your water breaks, when suddenly you're walking like this, when you're breathing like this, what is that? That is Kairos time. It is an appointed time. It is the kind of time that you can't put on a calendar, you just recognize it. And too much Chronos time, too much on your calendar, is something that will cause you to have to miss out on some of the Kairos moments that may happen. If you got your Bible, look in Ephesians chapter 5. In Ephesians chapter 5, verse 15 and 16, it says this, look carefully then how you walk or how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the best use of time because the days are evil. But what you need to know is that the word for time there is not making the best use of your schedule kind of time. It's not the best use of Chronos time. It is the best use of Kairos time, which is almost like interrupted time. Now, this isn't in your notes. You can write it down if you want or remember it if you need to. But basically, a full calendar may end up leaving no space for a full life. Because your calendar, your Chronos, is so full that you have no space for Kairos. Your schedule is so busy that when some appointed moment comes up where you're supposed to enter into it, because like we're counting with our marbles here, God has shown up and He's invited you into something and you've noticed it as you were going. But your schedule's so full you don't have time to stop. It's just like Moses. And too much is not wise. Too much scheduling is not wise. We need some margin. We need to, and we'll get through some things that we can change, but basically you're going to need to learn to say no to some scheduled events so that you have space for the unscheduled events. Because if your calendar is too full, if your Chronos time is already taken, if you know what you're doing now, then, and later, what happens when a friend calls you and they legitimately need a favor from you and it's not on your calendar? And it might have been that appointed Kairos moment where God is inviting you to enter into, but you're so hyper-scheduled that you miss it because you literally can't. Too much Chronos might keep you from having any Kairos. A full calendar might keep you from having a full life. What happens when the opportunity, some of you, especially the fear of missing out people, like your calendar's scheduled, your dates are set, and somebody has some amazing thing happen, like, hey, maybe Jess has her baby. And it's like, man, we need to celebrate because it's early, and she's happy, and they've moved into their house, and it's healthy. You're like, we should swing by there, but you can't because your schedule's out. You just missed out on a Kairos moment. What's worse for those of you who are hyper-scheduled, if you have to cancel something that's already on your calendar just in order to take advantage of something, you might be too busy. If you're regularly canceling things because you need to make room for other things, you might be overscheduled. And what you're doing is not good because too much is not wise. So what do? Jethro gives him a good idea, an explanation. He says in verse 18, he says, you and the people with you will certainly wear yourselves out. For the thing is too heavy for you. In other words, being too busy, having too much to do, too many needs to meet, too many things that are scheduled that you feel responsible for, it's too heavy for you. You're not able to do it alone. Now obey my voice, I'll give you advice. And God be with you. Now, what he's saying here, there's other ways to translate it, but let's just say he's not speaking for God. He's basically saying, weigh this to see if this lines up with God. Okay, Jethro is not God. He's a Midianite. He is not necessarily a follower of God at this point. He's one of the people that would honestly be considered almost opposed. And yet he's saying, hear me, listen to me, obey me, and God be with you. In other words, check this and make sure that it lines up with God. You shall represent the people before God and bring their cases to God, and you shall warn others about the statutes and laws and make them known the ways that which they walk and what they must do. Moreover, though, look for able men from all the people, men who fear God, who are trustworthy and hate a bribe, and place these men over the people as chiefs of thousands and of hundreds and of fifties and of tens. And let them judge the people at all times. Every great matter they shall bring to you, but any small matter they decide themselves, so it'll be easier for you. And they'll bear the burden with you. If you do this, God will direct you. You will be able to endure, and the people will also go to their place of peace. So basically what he's suggesting is you don't need to do it alone. It's not good. It's too much to bear because you're going to wear yourselves out. Not just you, but everybody around you. And so, I don't know about you, but I have great admiration and respect and even awe for single parents. For single parents who are able to figure out how to get it all done. But the truth of the matter is, if you're doing it alone, and this isn't an indictment on you, this is more an indictment on us who will not come alongside you to take care of some of the things that need to be done. If you're doing it alone, what you are doing is not good. Because here's what we need to learn. Doing less is actually going to accomplish more. And it's something that isn't going to happen just by rearranging your schedule or anything like that. It's something that, more importantly, we can notice from Moses here, is going to happen when we work on it together. Which, again, goes back to serving and leading. You can serve people, but if you're serving them alone, it's going to wear yourself out. What you're doing is not good. If you're leading people while you're serving so that they can do the same kind of thing that you're doing, you're training them and you're teaching them, then we can serve together and we can lead together. Because Moses is leading thousands and, leaders of thousands, leaders of hundreds, leaders of tens. And those guys are going to be leading other people at the same time that they're serving them. And so Moses didn't just do everything. He wasn't just too busy. In other words, he wasn't just a servant, but he also wasn't just a leader where he made everybody else too busy. It's where you put them together. Jesus talked a little bit about this, and so in Luke chapter 22, there's this argument that his disciples are having. And it's literally, they're celebrating the Passover. Jesus is about to be arrested and crucified, and his disciples are having one of those stupid arguments that they do because they just don't get it yet. And so in Luke chapter 22, verse 24, a dispute arose among them as to which of them was to be regarded as the greatest. And so Jesus said to them, the kings of the Gentiles exercise lordship over them, and those in authority over them are called benefactors. But not so with you. Rather, let the greatest among you become as the youngest, and the leader as one who serves. For who's the greater? One who reclines at a table or one who serves? Is it not the one who reclines at the table? But I am among you as one who serves. Jesus understood, and he was trying to explain that serving is okay. As a matter of fact, it's a necessary thing if you're going to lead, but you have to do both. You can't just fill up your schedule and serve your calendar. You have to leave space for other things to come in, and in doing so, you will be leading others when opportunities arise. As the kairos moments fill in, you can serve those. As the chronos moments, as the calendar fills in, you can serve those. Keep your appointments. However, you will be able to lead when God invites you into something if you have space for the unplanned. So here's what we do. We make space by doing less with our calendar so that we have space to do more with the opportunities that God brings before us. And I get the sense that if you're like me, you kind of look at this and you go, okay, well, this isn't exactly helpful because I literally have a lot of things I need to do. I've got a job that requires X amount of time. I've got a family that requires X amount of time. I've got kids that require X amount of time, who have activities that require X amount of time. And you're telling me that I should take less and do less so that I have more time to do the unplanned things. It's a legitimate struggle. What I'm telling you is we need to understand that we cannot fill our chronos time and still expect to experience God's hand in our life. So you'll need to figure out what you need to do about that. And we'll talk about it in a minute. You get to the end, and the story ends like this. So Moses, he listened to the voice of his father-in-law, and he did everything that he said. So he invited other people along. He gave them tasks. He delegated. He continued to teach them, but he gave them space to try it themselves. Moses chose able men out of all of Israel, and he made them heads over the people, chiefs of thousands, of hundreds, of 50s, and 10s. And they judged the people at all times. Any hard case they brought to Moses, but any small matter they decided themselves. And then Moses let his father-in-law depart, and he went away to his own country. Moses made the adjustment. Okay? He recognized that even though he had a good answer for why he was busy, that it wasn't a good enough answer because he didn't have his priorities completely right. He was just doing the work. He wasn't teaching others to be able to do what they needed to do. So if you're one of those people who's too busy, you feel overwhelmed. Your calendar's your friend, but you also are kind of mastered by your calendar instead of the master of your calendar. Now might be the right time to get your time right. Moses, no longer will we see Moses standing before the people from morning until evening. No longer will we see Moses doing it alone. What we're going to see is Moses is with the people, and he's leading the people, and the people are coming alongside, and they're working together, and it's because Moses figured out now is the right time to get your time right. This was a kairos moment, an appointed time that he didn't have on his calendar and nobody could have put there until Jethro showed up and said, hey, I want to enter into something and challenge you with a little something. And Moses realized that now was the time to get his time right. So, I don't know what your mess is. I don't know if you are hyper-organized and hyper-scheduled and stressed out because you're trying to fit everything in, and if it doesn't fit in a perfect time slot, you don't have a perfect life. Or if you're one of those that you don't have a calendar and it's non-existent, and you just kind of go with the flow, and everybody else is frustrated with you, but you just make it work. Neither of them are necessarily bad, but now is the time to get your time right. And here's why. Because if you're stressed out by what needs to be done or how to get it done, you're not living according to the plan and the path that Jesus offers us. In Matthew chapter 11, Jesus talks about a better way. He says, come to me, all you who are weary and you are heavy burdened or heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Now might be the right time to get your time right. You don't need to organize it according to everything that you need to get done, but we need to organize it according to what Jesus has already done. And that's really hard to figure out sometimes because guess what? if you don't meet with that person, you might feel like they won't approve of you. But if you're living in the kingdom of God and under the gospel says that God already approves of you. And you don't need to earn somebody else's approval. Now, that doesn't mean that you just brush people off and you're a jerk. Now, don't hear me wrong. But it means that if you're striving after what we talked about last week, success and approval, you're missing it. If you're trying to figure out how to fit everything in, you might be missing it and you're wearing yourself out. And Jesus says, that's not how it's supposed to be. I wanted to show you a better way. Take my yoke upon you, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. The things that I'm asking of you are easy. And what Jesus is asking is not fill your calendar. What Jesus is asking is pay attention to what I'm doing. Which is what we're doing when we're counting these things. Okay? Now, Grant, we're only in the beginning of March. We got a long ways to go. I'd love to see more marbles in there. I'd love to see us be able to recognize those kairos moments where God just shows up as we're walking about and we just have a conversation with somebody. We notice, but we also recognize, I've got time for this because we've decided that now's the time to get my time right. Now, Jesus understood the difference in these things. Romans chapter 5. Romans is a great book. It explains a lot about Jesus and his showing up and who he was and what he did and how all this works together. And in Romans chapter 5, just start in verse 6. For while we were still weak, this is Paul writing, he's talking about Jesus. At the right time, Christ died for the ungodly. For one will scarcely die for a righteous person, though perhaps for a good person one would dare to even die. But God shows his love for us in this, that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Okay, well, Jesus came in time, and we can mark that time with the general idea of where it is in chronos time. But what this is saying is, for while we were still weak, at the right time, at the appointed time, at the God time, which fits under chronos time, at that time, when you needed it most, Jesus showed up. And he died for you and for me. And so if Jesus can make time for us, the creator of time has his schedule all figured out, but he's still got space and time to come into our world and enter into it, we should probably be able to make space for him. It's one of the ways that he shows his love to us. It's not in a schedule. Now, you might have your quiet time in the morning, and that's great. And it's at whatever time you wake up, or 5 in the morning, this is when I'm going to set my alarm. That's fine. You can do that. But don't think that just by scheduling God time, because many of you wanted to schedule God time. I wish I had more time for God. Here's how you get it. You pay attention. Now is the right time to get your time right. And your time might be when God shows up at the appointed time. Christ died for the ungodly. Jesus showed up. And so, one other verse that just uses the Kairos version of time is in Colossians chapter 4, where it's talking about how we're supposed to live, how we should act as believers when we live in this kingdom reality. It says, walk in wisdom towards outsiders, making the best use of time. But again, it's not having a good schedule. It's not making sure that you get your priorities right in terms of what you put on your calendar. It's making the best use of your appointed times, those moments when God shows up. And let your speech always be gracious and seasoned with salt, so that you might know how you ought to answer each person. God is doing something. Do you have space to respond? So I'll give you a few suggestions, some ideas. You might have others. I'm more than happy to have you share them. If you have your connection card, you can write them down. If you think there's something beneficial for other people, write it down. There's a clicked link or an option there to put comments and critiques and questions. Online, you can do that too. But let me just give you some of these. We talked about entering into the mess. Here's what's going to happen. There are numerous obstacles that we will regularly encounter, and we're not going to be able to solve this problem for everybody, which is why we do for one what we wish we could do for all. You take care of one thing, won't be able to take care of everything. Some of the obstacles we're going to encounter is going to be the obstacles of inconvenience. And we might think, that's not convenient, so I just can't do it right now, and that's why things don't change. We might not like how it feels or how uncomfortable it is. And the other one is there might be some things that are completely out of our control. So, If you're one of those people who love your calendar and you're always busy and you've got it filled and you're basically overcommitted, here's just some suggestions. These aren't the only, these are just me throwing some things out there maybe you'd want to consider. If you're overcommitted, one of the things that might be inconvenient and difficult to do but would be beneficial would be to schedule your rest first. In other words, make rest one of your to-dos. Now that's inconvenient because here's what's going to happen. You're going to put rest on there, and some of you will say, hey, I'm going to take a nap or I'm going to go to bed at this time. I remember in high school and college, this was consistently one of my things. I would say, I'd wake up in the morning when the alarm went off, and you know you hate that sound, like you grow. Whatever sound your alarm clock made, it is like if somebody wanted to torture you years later, they would play that sound. I still remember it, which is why I don't use an alarm clock as much as I can. And I remember I'd wake up and I'd think, I got to go to bed earlier, because what was I doing? Even back then, I didn't have social media, I didn't have a phone to play with. What was I doing? I was watching television, I was reading a book, I would call on a corded phone and talk to my friends. And I'd wake up in the morning and go, I've got to go to bed earlier. And so I'd commit at 6 in the morning, say, I'm going to bed at 9:30 tonight. And 9:30 rolls around. I scheduled it. 9:30 rolls around, and it's like, man, I'm just not tired yet. 10:30 rolls around. Oh, let's see what's on the Tonight Show. Because I lived in the Midwest, and that's when it came on. And sooner or later, you've just wasted your time. Okay? But it's inconvenient to schedule your time. It's just as inconvenient to keep that time that you scheduled. So schedule your rest first. If you're one of those overcommitted people and you feel too busy, schedule your rest and then build around that. Maybe you need to start saying no. You're overcommitted. You got this fear of missing out. You want to do everything. You want to fit everything in. You want to make space and time for everybody. And it's going to be really hard for you to learn to say no. But you need to practice it. Here, let's do it together. Okay? On the count of three, we're all going to do this. 1, 2, 3. No. Okay? Now I want to hear from you. Okay? I'm just going to say 1, 2, 3, and you say no. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so you're capable of it. Okay? It's very uncomfortable, but you're capable of it. Out of control. If you want to overcome this, just embrace the interruptions. I put allow for interruptions to give a little bit of space because you might not be able to engage in every one of them. But I'll tell you this, if you're watching kids, whether they're yours or not, and you hear a scream in the other room, you don't just go, not on my schedule, somebody else take care of it. You run to the other room to find out what's going on. And it wasn't on your schedule. Okay, it's time for those of us who are overcommitted. Maybe we just need to step in and just kind of allow for some more interruptions. Look for them. These are the very things that we're counting. Okay, but there were some of you, this is not you. You're not overcommitted. You're not overscheduled. You don't even have a calendar. Okay? So you guys are what we would call like me, the unorganized. Okay? We're not scheduled. We just kind of like to, yeah, sure, sounds good. I got nothing on my calendar because I don't have anything on my calendar. Okay? You're the fun people. Or at least other people think you're the fun people because you can just say yes to anything. Hey, what are you doing this afternoon? Nothing. Great. You want to do this? And you're like, sure. It might be time to get your time right. Make the most use of your time. So, for you, what might be inconvenient is to actually use a calendar. Oh, I can't do that. You might want to try. You might have the Kairos thing down, but you are so annoying to everybody else who actually uses Chronos. Like, hey, you want to get together this day or this day or this day? And you're like, oh, yeah, whatever, just let me know. And they let you know, and you're like, I can't. Why? Well, because I'm doing this now. But you said you were free. But this came up. You're like an Eastern North Carolinian nightmare because you're like, hey, you want to do something on Thursday? And you're like, maybe. Are you going to be at whatever? You're like, I'll try. And you do, but you don't ever commit to it because you don't have a calendar, which goes to the discomfort part. If you're one of those people, here's what you need to do. Let your yes be yes. If you put something on the calendar, follow through. Even if you don't want to go. Even if something better comes along. Even if you think that something better is important. Okay, now, I am not saying, don't get me wrong, that if there's a funeral that happens and you have to go to it, like you don't cancel because, hey, I can't go to grandma's funeral because I already made this lunch appointment. Okay, use your brains. But at the same time, don't cancel this appointment with somebody because you'd rather spend time with this one, and this one just showed up a little too late. That's not a good use of your time or somebody else's. You might even consider it stealing because you just stole somebody's time. Last thing. Maybe you want to partner up. You don't have a calendar. You don't know how to do a calendar. You might just need to pick somebody who has a calendar, knows how to do a calendar, and said, hey, would you help me do this thing, figure this thing out? As a matter of fact, why don't you help me just set it up? I'll even run things by you. And this is actually, it can be fun, okay? And it can also be uncomfortable and all the other things, but it's just an option, okay? There are a million other ways that you can get your time right, and I would encourage you to consider that. But at the end of the day, you're not going to get more time. At the end of the day, you're not going to get a do-over with the time that you have. And at the end of the day, nobody's going to care what you did on Tuesday for lunch. People are going to care, are you able to turn one life into another life, into another life? Are you able to have an eternal impact? Because this is what our call is. It's not just to teach people. It's not just to know what we're supposed to do. And just so you know, band, it's going to smell nice up here for you guys. Okay? Whew, that's heavy. But guys, we have an opportunity to make the most of our time in the same way that Moses was praying when he wrote Psalm 90. Teach us to number our days, Lord, that we may gain a heart of wisdom. And so whether you are overscheduled, hyperscheduled, you want more time for this or for that, there are some things that you can do in Chronos, but there needs to be space for Kairos. You need to leave space for God to show up because God is inviting you into something that you cannot schedule. I'm going to say that again because some of you maybe didn't hear it. God is inviting you into something that you cannot schedule. You can schedule church. I'm glad you're here this morning. You can schedule small group or a missional community and show up on a Wednesday or a Thursday or a Friday or band practice on Tuesday or a meeting on Monday. You can schedule those things, but God is inviting you into something that you cannot schedule, which is what we're doing all year long. We're trying to figure out, can we recognize what God has invited us into? And so, in a second, I'm going to pray. If you got questions, you can put those on your cards. You can fill out the anonymous, online form or whatever. But we are counting 25,000 experiences that we recognize. And there's so many things that we miss because we're too scheduled. We're paying too much attention to what's happening in this time and not what's happening in God's time. But if you've noticed something, if you've recognized and you've entered into one of those God moments, we want you to share your marble. We also want you to record it for us online. There's also a link there. It's on the bottom of your sheet. If you go to our website, discoverync.com/25K, you can tell us how many of those you've had. You can tell us your stories, and we've kind of changed this up so you can read other people's stories. Okay? I was only able to transfer some of them. Now you're limited. You can't tell long stories. You can only tell 140 character stories. Okay? But it's one of those things where we get to encourage one another as we brag on what we've recognized God invited us into. And if God can invite me into something, he can invite you into something. And so share your stories so that other people can see your stories and be encouraged that God maybe really is at work. He hasn't left you out. He hasn't forgotten you.